Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to share a bit about how I've learned and applied Japanese cleaning methods into my life. I'm sure many of us have felt this way. Even though our home doesn't seem overly messy, we always end up tidying up every day, and it never quite feels like we're done. Japanese cleaning culture isn't just about wiping down surfaces or cleaning. For the Japanese, cleaning is a way to bring peace and harmony to both the space and the mind. Each act of cleaning isn't just about making the home look tidy, but also about reducing unnecessary stress in life. After trying out some of these methods, I realized something simple. Our homes aren't messy because we're lazy, but because we hold on to too many things that no longer serve our current life. Things that seem harmless, like where we drop stuff when we walk in, or objects that keep moving from one spot to another without a designated home, are actually the reason we feel like we're constantly cleaning but never getting anywhere. In this video, I'm going to share how I've applied Japanese cleaning methods, not to make my home look better, but to reduce the effort and stress every time I come home. Let's dive into these simple tips that can make your living space lighter and more comfortable right here, right now. Most people think clutter comes from having too many things, but that's rarely the real issue. The real problem lies in the subtle places in your home that quietly create work for you every single day. These areas aren't messy, they're usually not dirty, so they're easy to overlook, but they're the spots that consistently demand your attention and require small adjustments. A friction point is any area where you have to interact with the same items over and over just to keep the space functional. You walk by, make a small adjustment, move something slightly, and then move on. None of these actions seem serious enough to address, but over time they add up and drain your energy. In Japan, there's a strong focus on creating harmonious spaces where every item has its place, reducing the mental load that comes from constant decisions. Japanese cleaning practices aren't just about tidying up, but about minimizing these small friction points, ensuring that the space isn't constantly asking you to fix things. It's a principle of being proactive in organizing your environment so it doesn't continuously demand your attention. If this concept sounds familiar, tomorrow's video will continue from here, exploring ways to further reduce this kind of daily friction, especially when things keep slipping back into chaos after you thought you had dealt with them. Think about the chair that slowly becomes a clothes rack, the surface where mail bags and miscellaneous objects pile up, or the corner where things end up because you haven't decided where they truly belong. These areas don't look chaotic, but they never stay finished either. The important thing to understand is that friction points aren't a result of laziness or poor habits. They usually indicate that your space is unintentionally asking you to make decisions it shouldn't be asking for in the first place. When a space has no clear rules, you become the system, and that's what makes it tiring. For now, don't clean anything, don't put things away, don't sort, don't organize. All you need to do is observe. Over the next few minutes, or even later today, pay attention to the areas you instinctively fix without thinking. If you touch the same spot more than once in a day, that's a friction point. In the next section, we'll take one of those friction points and analyze why it exists, not just to make it look better, but to understand how we can approach it in a way that stops it from creating extra work in your daily life. Just like the Japanese method of organizing, where they focus on simplicity and efficiency, we're not looking for a temporary fix, but a lasting solution that reduces the mental load and keeps your space working for you, not against you. Once you've identified a friction point, the next thing to understand is why it exists. The issue is not that the area is disorganized. Rather, the problem is that this space is forcing you to make decisions you shouldn't have to make every day. Every time you stop to think about where something should go, even for a second, you're spending energy. One decision on its own doesn't seem like much, but when the same decision repeats day after day, it turns into mental noise. This is what makes a home feel heavy even when it looks fine. In Japanese culture, there's a strong focus on reducing these small decisions in the home. The Japanese believe that a home should not only be a place to live, but also a place to relax and recharge. That's why every item in their living space has a clear and designated spot. Their space doesn't require them to think about where to put things because everything already has its place. A space that requires you to make constant decisions doesn't just create physical friction, but mental friction as well. Items that don't have a clear home tend to remain in sight because putting them away requires a decision, and that decision takes effort. Those items just sit there waiting for you to deal with them again later. This is very similar to the Japanese approach to cleaning and organizing. They believe that your space shouldn't demand that you make decisions every time you interact with something. An item should have only one obvious place, and putting it away shouldn't feel like a decision, but an automatic action. This reduces mental fatigue and eliminates friction. The goal here isn't to decide better or to be more disciplined. The goal is to remove decisions entirely. When an item has one clear place to go, your brain doesn't need to get involved. The action becomes automatic and friction disappears. So for now, take a look at the friction points you've noticed and examine them closely. Ask yourself how many decisions it asks you to make when you interact with it. If the answer is more than one, that's exactly why it keeps pulling you back in. To reduce the mental load caused by too many decisions, we need to approach this systematically, and that's where the next step comes in changing the order in which we clean and reset the space. This approach helps solve the problem at its core, not just its surface. Most people clean in the wrong order, and that's why the same areas keep falling apart. We're often taught to wipe surfaces first, straighten things up, and make the space look presentable, but this only treats the surface, not the deeper reason the space keeps demanding attention. When you clean before removing friction, you're basically just resetting a problem instead of solving it. The space may look better for a short time, but the same decisions and habits are still lurking underneath, ready to recreate the mess as soon as you start using the space again. The correct order is simple but often uncomfortable. First, you need to remove or reduce what doesn't need to be there. Then you resolve where things actually belong. Only after that do you clean. If you skip the first two steps, cleaning becomes a loop instead of a solution. I learned this approach after diving into Japanese cleaning principles. In Japan, they don't just focus on cleaning to make things look tidy, they think about the space and how it works for them every day. The Japanese are very intentional about where things go and how they organize their lives to minimize friction. For example, they don't clean surfaces and make things look presentable just for the sake of it. They first reduce the clutter, ensure everything has a clear place, and only then do they tidy up. By removing the distractions and friction points first, they make cleaning easier and more sustainable in the long run. This is why deep cleaning can often feel pointless. You scrub, you organize, you feel productive, and a few days later, the space feels heavy again. The effort wasn't wasted, but it was applied at the wrong stage. In this block, don't worry about making everything look good. Choose one friction point and slow down. Take the items out one by one and ask yourself, do they really need to be here if they don't remove them entirely? If they do, give them a clear and simple place to return to. Once friction is reduced, cleaning becomes lighter and lasts longer. When I applied this concept, it clicked just like the Japanese approach. Cleaning becomes a task you do less often and with much more ease because you've already dealt with the underlying friction. In the next section, we'll talk about how to give items a clear stopping point so they don't drift back into your daily path. After you remove unnecessary items and reduce decisions, the next problem becomes obvious. Many things in your home don't actually have a place where they clearly stop. They get used, moved, and then left somewhere in between, not because you're careless, but because the space never told them where to end. I remember learning about how the Japanese approach organization and space. They don't just focus on where things go, but also on where they stop. It sounds simple, but this idea really struck me. If an item doesn't have a clear endpoint, it will drift. It might start in the right place, but after being used a few times, it slowly moves closer to your daily path onto chairs, tables, or any surface that feels temporarily convenient. This isn't disorder, it's just a missing endpoint. In Japan, everything has a clear place. Not just a place to start, but a final resting place. I realized that in my own home, I had been trying to fix this by adding more containers or shelves, but I quickly found out that more storage doesn't automatically create clarity. If an item can stop in more than one place, it will usually stop in the easiest one, not the correct one. The Japanese are so intentional about this. They believe that everything should have one obvious stopping point. It's not about making things look neat, it's about making sure that when an item is used, it has one clear place to return to. This way, putting things away stops feeling like a task. Instead, it becomes a natural part of the process. You use something and returning it is simply the final step. Not a decision, but an action that feels effortless. So I started looking at the friction points in my own space. I identified which items never really left those that I kept moving from one place to another. These were the items without a clear stopping point. At first, I was tempted to just focus on making the area look neat, but I quickly realized that the real solution was making the endpoint unavoidable. Once those items knew exactly where they needed to go, they stopped drifting back into my path. In the next block, we'll talk about how to deal with the objects that aren't bad enough to throw away, but quietly break your rhythm every day, something I've learned to handle in the same intentional way the Japanese do. Some of the most disruptive objects in a home are not broken, not ugly, and not completely useless. They sit in a quiet middle space where they're never important enough to prioritize and never annoying enough to remove. Because of that, they stay. I first realized this after diving deeper into Japanese decluttering practices. In Japan, they really emphasize the idea of kintsugi, not just repairing things, but appreciating them for their purpose and function. It made me rethink how I approached items in my own home. These not bad enough items are the ones you keep adjusting. They work, but not well enough to feel essential. You don't love them, but you don't dislike them enough to let them go. And since there's no clear decision attached to them, they hover in your space, subtly disrupting your rhythm. What makes these items difficult to deal with is that they don't trigger urgency. You don't wake up thinking you need to deal with them, but over time, they slowly add friction by taking up space and attention every time you move around them. It's like how the Japanese think about clutter. It's not about just making the space look better, it's about reducing unnecessary distractions and creating a sense of balance. They teach that every item should serve a clear, meaningful purpose. If something doesn't contribute to that sense of balance, it doesn't belong. The mistake most people make is waiting for a strong reason to remove these items. But friction doesn't come from big problems, it comes from unresolved ones. If something consistently asks for your attention without giving much back, that's already enough information. This is exactly how the Japanese approach their spaces. They don't hold on to things just because they're not bad enough to get rid of. They ask whether it truly contributes to their life now. At this stage, don't ask whether an item is still usable or whether it might be useful someday. Instead, ask whether it actively supports how you live now. If the answer is no, it doesn't need to stay in your daily space, even if you're not ready to part with it entirely. The Japanese wisdom of letting go of things that don't serve your current needs was a game changer for me. By removing these in-between items from your main areas, you immediately lower the background noise of your home. It's like simplifying your life in the same way the Japanese focus on intentional living. Everything should have a clear, direct role. In the next block, we'll talk about shared items and why they often become the biggest source of ongoing clutter. Shared items are one of the most common sources of friction in a home, especially when no one has clearly claimed responsibility for them. These are things everyone uses, but no one owns, and therefore no one feels fully accountable for putting them back. This reminded me of how the Japanese think about ownership and shared responsibility in their homes. In Japan, there's a strong emphasis on personal accountability when it comes to shared items. I learned that in a Japanese household, even shared items are assigned clear ownership, or a specific person is responsible for putting them back in their place. This helps eliminate that feeling of something belonging to everyone, yet no one at the same time. When an item belongs to everyone, it often ends up belonging nowhere. It gets used, placed down temporarily, and then left there because returning it doesn't feel urgent or personal. Over time, these objects start drifting through the house, showing up in random places and slowly cluttering your daily path. This isn't about carelessness, it's about unclear ownership. I remember reading about how the Japanese approach shared spaces and how they make sure each person in the home is responsible for their own things down to the smallest details. That way, nothing drifts around and the space remains organized. When responsibility is shared, action becomes optional, and optional actions are the first ones to disappear when you're tired or in a hurry. It's very much like the Japanese philosophy of minimalism. Every item, whether shared or not, should have a designated place, and everyone in the household should respect that. If there's no clear rule, no one feels responsible, and the clutter builds up. Many people try to solve this problem by adding more duplicates or creating multiple storage spots, but that usually makes the problem worse. More locations mean more uncertainty, and uncertainty creates hesitation. The item never quite settles. The Japanese avoid this by maintaining simplicity. They don't complicate things with excess storage solutions. Instead, they focus on creating clarity, one place for everything, and clear expectations of where things belong. What shared items need is clarity, not convenience. One clear place to live and one clear expectation about who returns it. Even in a household of one, this matters. I've learned from the Japanese that if you treat an item as temporary, in your mind, you'll keep postponing the decision to put it away, and over time, it becomes a source of frustration. So look at the friction points you identified earlier and notice which items feel like they don't really belong to anyone. Those are the ones quietly creating the most work. The Japanese approach helped me see that this issue isn't just about tidying up, it's about being intentional with where things belong and who is responsible for them. In the next section, we'll talk about how fatigue changes the way you use your space and why organizing for ideal behavior rarely works in real life. Most homes are organized for a version of you that has energy, time, and patience. That version exists sometimes, but it's not the one using your space most of the day. When you're tired, distracted, or in a hurry, your behavior changes, and your home needs to account for that. This idea really hit home for me when I started learning about Japanese organization practices. In Japan, they focus on creating spaces that work for real life, not ideal life. They understand that most of the time, you're not operating at your best, and they design their homes to make daily life easier even when you're exhausted or in a rush. I realized I had been organizing my space as if I always had time and energy, but that's just not how it works in real life. When you're exhausted, you reach for what's closest, not what's perfectly stored. You place things down where it requires the least effort, not where they ideally belong. This isn't a failure of discipline, it's a predictable pattern. The Japanese approach acknowledges this. They make sure their spaces are designed for ease, so even when they're tired or distracted, they don't have to make extra decisions. For example, they ensure that things can be easily reached or put away without unnecessary steps, because they know they won't have the energy to deal with anything complicated when they're worn out. The problem starts when your home is arranged based on ideal behavior instead of real behavior. Items that require bending opening lids or extra steps are the first ones to be abandoned when energy is low. Over time, those actions create new friction points. This is something the Japanese get right. Everything is streamlined for simplicity. Their spaces encourage the least effort, so you're never left in a situation where you can't put something away easily. Instead of asking how you want to use a space, ask how you actually use it when you're tired. Which items do you still reach for? Which ones do you avoid putting away? Those answers tell you more than any organizing system ever will. I had to stop thinking about the ideal version of my space and start focusing on how I use it when I'm at my lowest energy. The Japanese teach that true organization comes when you design for the moments when you're tired and overwhelmed, not when everything is perfect. At this stage, adjust your space to match your lowest energy self. Make the easiest action the correct action. When putting something away takes less effort than leaving it out, the friction disappears naturally. I've found this concept so useful in my own home. By making things easier to put away, the friction just fades away, and I no longer feel like I'm fighting against my own exhaustion. In the next block, we'll move away from spaces and objects and focus on behavior, because changing one repeated action can stabilize an entire area of your home. This is another lesson I learned from the Japanese approach. When you change your actions, you change the space too. One of the biggest reasons people feel overwhelmed by cleaning is because they try to fix everything at once. They look at an entire room or even the whole home and immediately feel behind before they've even started. That pressure usually leads to either rushing through it or avoiding it completely. I remember feeling the same way until I started looking at how the Japanese approach organization and cleaning. In Japan, the focus is not on fixing everything at once, but on managing small, repeated actions. They understand that your home functions not as one big system, but as a series of small, ongoing behaviors. The same few actions happen every day, and those actions shape how your space feels over time. Instead of asking how to clean an entire room, the Japanese often ask themselves which behavior is creating the most friction. For example, they focus on how they handle their daily routines, like how they remove their shoes, how they organize items when they come home, or how they do laundry. I realized that these were the exact habits causing the most chaos in my space too. These daily moments, whether we're motivated or not, are what create the messes in the first place. When I focused on fixing one behavior, I started noticing that the effect spread further than I expected. A small change in my daily actions, like having a designated spot to drop my keys instead of letting them pile up on the counter, stabilized an entire area of my home. The problem stopped being recreated every day because I was no longer cleaning up the result. I was changing the cause. At this point, I chose just one repeated behavior and ignored the rest. I didn't try to optimize it or make it perfect. I just made it simple enough that I could repeat it even on my worst days. The Japanese approach taught me that making small, repeatable changes can lead to lasting transformations. When you simplify the process, it sticks and it doesn't feel like a chore anymore. In the next block, we'll talk about emotional items and why keeping them in functional spaces often creates quiet resistance in your home. The Japanese approach also touches on this. They believe that items that hold emotional value should be placed with intention so they don't disrupt the flow of your space. This is something I've learned to apply, and it made a huge difference in how I feel at home. Not everything in your home exists to be useful. Some items exist because they carry memory, meaning, or emotional weight. The problem starts when those items are placed in spaces that are meant to function efficiently. I've experienced this firsthand, and it really clicked when I learned about how the Japanese approach emotional items in their homes. In Japan, they don't just think about utility, they think about the meaning and purpose behind each object, especially when it comes to emotional items. In fact, the Japanese take great care in placing emotional items where they won't disrupt the flow of daily life. I realized I had been putting emotional items in spaces meant for functionality, like near the front door or in the kitchen, places where I needed speed and simplicity. These emotional items didn't belong there, and I noticed they made me hesitate every time I interacted with those spaces. Emotional items slow down functional spaces. They make you hesitate. You don't want to move them, you don't want to get rid of them, and you don't want to treat them like ordinary objects, so they stay exactly where they interrupt your daily flow the most. It was this very friction that the Japanese actively avoid by being intentional about where things like family heirlooms or sentimental objects are placed. They don't treat them like clutter, but instead they assign them a space that feels right for their meaning. This creates a quiet kind of resistance. Every time you interact with that space, there's a small pause, a moment of uncertainty, and over time, that hesitation becomes friction. The space feels heavier, even though nothing is technically wrong. After learning about the Japanese approach, I understood that the issue wasn't my attachment to the items, it was their placement. Emotional items don't belong in areas that require speed, repetition, and low effort. When you mix emotional weight with daily function, both suffer. Instead of asking whether you should keep these items, ask where they should live. The Japanese wisdom taught me to give these items a space that matches their purpose, one where you can notice them intentionally and with appreciation, not in a spot where you deal with them repeatedly by accident. Once I moved my emotional items to designated areas, like a small shelf or a quiet corner, it made a huge difference. It wasn't that I stopped cherishing them, but I stopped letting them get in the way of my daily rhythm. When emotional items are moved out of functional zones, those zones become lighter and easier to maintain. It was through this simple shift that I felt a greater sense of peace in my home, just like the Japanese believe that balance in a space comes from intentional placement. In the next and final block, we'll step back from individual items and talk about rules, because long-term stability doesn't come from constant effort, it comes from clear limits. The Japanese also emphasize simplicity in their approach to rules, and I've found it to be one of the most effective ways to maintain a home with ease. Now that we've covered the key strategies, we're at the final part of this video. By this point, it should be clear that keeping a home stable isn't about how often you clean. It's about how clearly you've defined what's allowed and what isn't. Without rules, every object becomes a question and every day becomes a negotiation. This concept really clicked for me after learning about the Japanese approach to maintaining a tidy home. In Japan, the focus is less on constantly cleaning and more on establishing clear, simple rules that make maintaining the space effortless. The Japanese value simplicity and clarity in their homes, and they know that rules small but intentional are the key to keeping things stable. They don't rely on cleaning every day to make their home feel good. They rely on having clear boundaries for everything from where things go to how things are used. Rules remove the need to decide. They create boundaries that hold even when you're tired, busy, or distracted. And the best rules are simple enough that you don't have to remember them, you just follow them. I began applying this in my own home, adopting rules like everything has a place and nothing stays on the chairs. These rules weren't complicated, but they gave my space the stability it needed. Like the Japanese, I realized that the fewer rules I had, the stronger they became. Simplicity really is key. These rules don't need to cover everything. In fact, the fewer you have, the stronger they are. A rule like nothing stays on chairs or every item needs one clear place does more than a complicated system ever could. The Japanese have a similar philosophy. They create a space that is simple, functional, and easy to maintain where the rules aren't rigid, but provide enough structure to prevent chaos. What matters is consistency, not perfection. A rule that's followed most days is more effective than a perfect system that only works when you have energy. Once a rule is in place, cleaning becomes maintenance instead of recovery. I found that when I started applying small, clear rules just like the Japanese, they helped me focus on maintenance rather than feeling like I was constantly cleaning up the same mess. Take a moment and think about the spaces that keep falling apart. There's usually a missing rule there. Not a lack of effort, not a lack of discipline, just a missing boundary. For me, learning from the Japanese, I started seeing how the lack of rules was the root cause of the frustration. With clear boundaries in place, everything fell into place naturally. When you replace effort with rules, your home stops asking for attention. It holds itself together. And that's when cleaning stops being a constant task and becomes an occasional reset. Just like in Japanese homes, once you've set the rules, the space flows more smoothly and it doesn't demand constant upkeep. This is the last part of the video, and I hope these insights give you a new perspective on creating a space that works for you without the constant battle. Thanks for sticking with me. If you noticed throughout this video, I didn't focus on cleaning more or organizing harder. Those only address the surface, not the ongoing effort your space demands. What truly matters is reducing the need to deal with the same things over and over. The Japanese approach teaches that when things have clear stopping points and daily actions are simplified, your space becomes lighter without more work. You don't need to apply everything at once. One small change is enough to break an old loop. One behavior fixed, one rule in place. From there, things will start to settle naturally. Tomorrow, I'll share another video on reducing effort in your space. It's not about doing more, but making things hold better, just like the Japanese focus on simplicity. If you want to start now, pick one spot that needs adjusting and begin there. No rush, just clarity.